This week on the Unnamed Fantasy Football Podcast, we talk about trade negotiations gone absolutely wacky, the breadth of mid-level talent in fantasy football this year and how to evaluate it, educated guess or just crapshoot. And then we make some bold fantasy and non-fantasy football predictions. Let's get started with a story from Mr. AJ.
All right, listen, so I have to tell you this story from today because sometimes when you're trying to negotiate with people in fantasy football trades, it goes very well. Like, I think you and I tend to have really civil discussions about trade values and all that stuff, and we normally either work out something that we like or we don't, and it's all good. It's all love at the end of the day. I was talking with one of the guys in our league today. We're gonna call him Gavin for the sake of A, I want that to be his new nickname, and B, I sort of hate him now. So Gavin is in a similar position as I am in our league, where we had teams that we really liked and we thought were good, and then a lot of the guys didn't pan out, and we're kind of struggling in the league, and so we're looking to mix things up, right? Trying to mix things up, which is great. So I email him this morning at work. And we start talking about, trades, right? And what he wants is keepers. So he wants to get guys to keep for next year. I'm not giving up yet because I just can't, But I have a lot of guys that I can keep. I have C.J. Spiller as a late-round pick, DeMarco Murray's a 14th rounder, Matt Stafford a 6th rounder, Demaryius Thomas in the 5th round. So there's some guys. Okay, so I have some flexibility. So we start to negotiate, right? He said, these are the guys I want. I said, well, here's who I'm willing to deal. I'll give you one or two of those guys. He basically asked for all my keepers, right, for a couple of his players. And I said, so I start, and I'm, of course, well, no, you can't have all my keepers. So we're negotiating, and he puts a trade out there, and he says, here's this trade, right? I'll give you my two quarterbacks, right? Darren McFadden, Marcus Colston, and that was it, right? I'll give you those four guys. If you give me Matt Stafford, who's got great keeper value, DeMarco Murray, right, and Greg Jennings. So I said, okay, that's a pretty good value. All right, let me just ask you, because I really like Stafford, and you know this, I'm a huge Stafford guy. Is there any trade that I can keep Stafford in? Okay, basically no, right? Because he really wants it. All right, fine. So I throw some things out there. So we start to discuss that. And I said, all right, well, that's not going to work. So I send them, all right. So your quarterbacks, Darren McFadden and Marcus Colston for Stafford, Stafford, Murray, and Jennings, right?
Sure.
And he replies to me, whoa. This is getting out of control, all right? At this point, you can't just throw something back at me, changing the whole trade.
Wait, didn't you say that you threw back at him what the trade was?
Yeah, so I sent him the same exact thing, right? And I go back in the email and I copy and paste it to him. I said, Gavin, this was your proposal.
Gavin.
You offered this. And he goes, okay, well, then why don't you just throw in Steve Smith, and I'll throw in like Santana Moss, who we just picked up off of waivers. I said, no, go with the trade that you said. He goes, okay, well then just throw in Felix Jones and Santana Moss, and I'll give you Kenny Britt. I said, Gavin, first of all, you accused me of changing the trade. I go back to what's normal, and now you're saying, well, since whatever, just throw in all these extra guys. And ultimately I said, okay, you know what, I'm just so sick of you. A, I don't want to trade on principle, but B, I have to mix up my team, whatever. I'll give you Steve Smith and Felix Jones. I just want to mix up my team. Just send it over. So he sends it over, right? And I'm at work, so I don't, confirm or anything, but I'm at work. So then I go home. I get home, I open up my iPad, I go to my league page, trade has been canceled. I text him, where'd the trade go? He goes, I don't know, it should still be there. I said, no, you canceled it. He goes, how about Jonathan Stewart and someone else for Demaryius Thomas? And I said, no. I said, what happened to our other trade? He said, oh, well, it should still be there. I said, not there. You can't. So this dude, all day, Jimmy, this is all day. And he literally, I cannot make this up, he literally just texted me while we're recording this, Jonathan Stewart for Greg Jennings.
Straight
I
up.
want to kill myself.
So
I want to kill myself.
It's funny because I thought about tweeting a few minutes ago about this specific person, that now that they had picked Jonathan Stewart up off of waivers and he had been announced the starter for that team, how long it would take him to start packaging him in trades. And I think this is actually a great segue to some more topics this week. And it involves waiver wire pickups of guys. I think there's a couple other things we want to talk about this week, but I think waiver wire pickups of guys, they are not good trade bait. I got suckered with this earlier this year. I traded Marcus Colston for Ryan Williams, who was picked up off waivers. Granted, I had a crush on Ryan Williams to start off the season in the draft. Didn't end up getting him. When they said he was the starter, I was like, okay, let me grab him, and then he gets hurt the first game. Total fluke. You can't predict that. Fantasy football is a crapshoot. Whatever. But you can't pick guys up off of waivers and then try to immediately package them in trades. If guys wanted them in waivers or guys wanted to pick them up as free agents, they would have done that. And trying to just sneak your way in and grab somebody before anyone else can, that's a total shady move.
I totally disagree with everything except that it's a shady move. Because here's the thing. Trent Richardson might not play on Sunday, right?
Okay.
CJ Spiller's on a bye. DeMarco Murray's hurt. So I have Felix Jones. Right now I got 2 running back spots, and I have Felix Jones. So put a bullet in my face, okay? But Jonathan Stewart might have been valuable, at least, as a bye week fill-in for me. Now, I think it's good defense on the part of managers who can afford to snatch those guys up and rotate them in and out and try to trade for them. And I think that's a good strategy. But the issue is the guys in our league, they try to trade them for starters. They try to trade them for studs. Like if I go out and grab Jonathan Stewart and I don't need him, but maybe someone else needs a fill-in, I can trade him maybe for a bench guy or give me some depth. I can't expect to trade him for, Marcus Colston. I mean, that clearly worked on you once, but that has other circumstances. And I think that's the issue. I don't think you can pick those guys up and expect to trade them for starters, which is what the guys in our league try to do. Rashard Jennings just got picked up, and that was just purely out of spite of someone else. Picked him up, and I'm going to keep him on my bench just to piss you off, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the strategy that makes fantasy football fun, is when people do that, pick guys up as defense. And there's a little bit of a difference, too. Like, defense is picking a guy up so that someone else can't start him, having somebody against you that you pick up. You pick up the handcuff because you have a feeling that guy's not going to start, just so that they're kind of screwed there. I will be with you on this one, that trading them for like bench pieces, if someone needs the depth, that can be a solid strategy. But you cannot expect 100% in agreement on this. You cannot expect to get starter value for it. Marcus Colston was probably a flex wide receiver at best when I traded him based on his scores.
He was under 7 points. Yeah, he was under 7 points for 3 straight weeks. So in your defense, it wasn't an totally insane trade. Of course, he blew up after that,
and Williams got hurt. But I have belabored that point more than enough. But it just goes but you see the same guys, I think, sometimes just like stalking the waiver wire. And it's, being able to freely pick up free agents exasperates us a little bit. But guys that just stalk the waiver wire, pick up people, and then immediately try to package them in trades for major starters. Or try to package them as like add-ons for trades. Yeah. And it's like, I didn't really want that guy to begin with. You're just throwing him in to try to increase value that I don't want. Especially not if that guy's going to sit on my bench. I don't want to trade for guys that are going to just be bench players for me. Yeah. If it's going to be a buy fill-in, I can accept that. If it's your situation where you've got a bunch of guys that are hurt, grabbing an extra running back this week is probably smart. Mm-hmm. Because you need to fill out your depth a little bit, at least for this week, with someone better than what you're going to get off waivers, which is pretty much no one at this point. Because running back is so shallow.
So in this offseason, our league, we added draft pick trading. And I've said this before, but I stocked up on mid-round picks. So I stocked up on rounds 2 through 5. I had 8 picks in rounds 2 through 5. And I wanted a ton of depth, and I figured the more guys I can grab in that range, the higher chance I have to hit on a running back or a wide receiver that was kind of in the middle rounds and was going to be like a tier 1 guy. Obviously, that has not gone totally to scheme, but what it has left me in is this predicament where I don't have anyone on my team that I can really drop right now to pick up like a Jonathan Stewart. because I have on my bench, I have guys like Greg Jennings, I have Steve Smith on my bench, Des Bryant occasionally is on my bench, depending on the week, Trent Richardson or DeMarco Murray or Felix Jones, or those guys, my backup quarterback, so like I don't really have a lot of flexibility, and that's kind of hurt me in this situation where I want to, maybe grab a guy for trade value to trade to someone else as a package, and I can't do that. So that was a foresight that I kind of missed.
And I'll tell you what it also makes a struggle for, and that's a great point. I have guys on my team that I can drop, but I don't have guys on my team that I can drop and feel like they won't get picked up if I need them for depth later. And that's the problem I'm running into, is like I could just keep tinkering with pieces, but my starting lineup is pretty much going to be the same, and I don't really want to move my bench around, mostly because I do have a little bit of keeper value there. Yeah. The big pain in the neck for this, which I know you've gone through or are going through, and I've gone through, is what to do when your defense and kicker are on buys.
Yeah.
You're not going to carry 2 or 3 defenses or kickers to cover your bye week. So when they're on a bye, you have to drop somebody that's a legitimate player on your team, or try to trade, which that's. I'm usually not for trading defenses or kickers. I guess you can if you have to, but.
Well, the thing is this: the ones that you would trade for, which is like the Chicago Bears, they score so much that guy who owns them is never going to trade them, right? Yeah. He's not going to trade you the Bears unless he's going to get a starter and another good defense to fill in, because it's not worth going from the Bears, who score 20+ points a game, to whoever is next in that line.
Yeah.
But what really pisses me off is the guys who have so much room on their benches that they can just rotate these free agents in and out all over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. That's maddening, because we both see this. They both hit you up with trade offers all the time, and it just kills you, and it's just super annoying. And I was obviously doing something else while trying to say that, so I was thoroughly distracted.
No, totally fine. So I don't know where to go from there. I guess I don't like. I'm so fed up with trading this year, I guess, because I have some guys that I want to trade. I have some guys on my team that I've thought about trading, but I just can't bring myself to do it. And the offers I'm just getting blasted with offers for so many people for such. It's like 4 for 1 trades, 4 for 2 trades. Silly, and I just.
The thing that kills you with that is that these guys forget that they give you 4 guys. You have to get rid of 3 guys on your bench.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just like, oh, I'll give you all these great guys for you, and you can just give me that one guy. It's you have to pick 3 guys on your bench now to drop.
Yeah.
And it's a value over replacement thing. Where are those guys better than your bench guys? Like, you obviously have those guys on your bench for a reason, and maybe you don't just want to part with them so soon. So I don't know, but that's so frustrating.
Not only that, but what gets me about trading is when people. I don't want to trade for guys that are just going to sit on my bench. Like, I'm probably trading away a starting piece more than likely in a lot of these trades for guys that are going to sit on. Like, I'll maybe get one person that's a lower starting piece, but like saying I'll trade you your 1 running back for these 2 running backs. Well, that means I either have to cut somebody else out of my starting lineup who was in my starting lineup. There's probably a good reason for that, or I have to. Just keep rotating guys through. Or put one of them on my bench. It's stupid. Like, you have to bench somebody for that, and it just doesn't make sense. That's why even trades are way better in my opinion, because there's no question about who you're dropping or whatever. Like, and it should be for pieces that you're actually going to work with, not for garbage duty pieces.
And again, what ended up happening was the trade that I was working today with Gavin ended up being 5 for 5, right? Which is for on Google Hangout, and Jimmy just showed me his bare nipples, and now I'm totally flustered. I'm totally flustered. Anyways, it ended up being a 5 for 5 trade, which I agree is totally out of control, but that's where it got to be. And then the trade's canceled. I don't know what to do, Jimmy.
No, I don't know what to do as far as trades go either. I mean, we can belabor the trade point. I actually get some people asking me about trades throughout the week, and it's tough. Trading is so tough, and all value is relative. It's all about how much you value a particular player over another. So there's really no way to say, like, what's going to be a fair trade or not. And then, you can't really get blasted for a bad trade unless it's like heinously bad and you really thought you were doing well. If you trade Adrian Peterson and Jamal Charles for Jonathan Stewart this week, you made a really bad trade. And if you think it's really good, then you should stop playing fantasy football because you're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really hurting the ability to trade is how not shallow in terms of there's a few guys, but shallow in terms of it's super wide. So think of it like I don't know, is the kind of the wide receiver 2 and the running back 2 spot on fantasy teams. You have your elite guys, right? For wide receiver, it's guys like Victor Cruz and AJ Green are way up there. Percy Harvin is way up there. Brandon Marshall's pretty good week to week. Wes Welker's been really good. Jordy Nelson has had a couple big games recently that have put him up there. Marcus Colston, same thing. So you got these guys that are way up there, kind of over 100 points on the fantasy year. And then you have this huge range of guys who have scored between like 70 and 85 points, and it's about 20 guys.
Yeah.
Right? And it's impossible. It's impossible to really like value those guys. Like Antonio Brown, right, has scored 67 points. Okay, but he's had a bye, so keep that in mind. Antonio Brown scored 67 points, but he's got a bye. He's really consistent.
Yep.
So he's a little bit over 10 points a week, right? And at the same time, a guy like Dwayne Bowe or even Julio Jones. Julio Jones has scored 76 points, right? So 9 points more than Antonio Brown. Okay, 9 points more, and I don't know if Julio Jones has had his bye yet. I think they just had it.
Yeah, they just had it this week.
So they just had it, right? So that's 9 points. So that's about 2 points a week. That's less than 2 points per week. But if and when because I have proposed Antonio Brown in a trade, people are no way. There's no way. That guy's a bench player. He was called a bench player to me today. He said Antonio Brown's a bench player. I said bench player. I've started him every week. That dude is consistent as day. Should have had a touchdown pass this week. If you're four-string running back, which I guess I can't really fault him too much, could caught the ball. That guy does it all. He's a lock for 5 to 7 catches. Ben loves throwing to him. He returns punts, so you get that little bonus. But nobody would ever trade him for Julio Jones, right? But they're 9 points away in fantasy scoring in our league this year.
No, and like you also have to look. Julio Jones still isn't the top wide receiver on his team.
On his team,
it's a team that probably passes more than others in the Falcons, and Julio Jones gets a lot of work. But Julio Jones is going to be up and down, and I think that's been evidenced pretty well this year. That's the problem I have with looking when we're talking about this. This range of people where you've got this like top tier guy and then you've got these middle tier guys. The top tier guys are like an AJ Green who's scoring, double digit, almost 20 fantasy points a freaking week.
Yeah.
Like the first week was his only non-double digit, and then this past week against Pittsburgh, which
even though your
who knows why that happened.
Boys shut him down.
Yeah, but it was his only non-double digit weeks. Other than that, he's averaging about 20 points a week. If you take out the outliers, the two low ones, he's averaging about 20 points a week. Like that's consistency. Victor Cruz is averaging somewhere in the same range. Like he's up there in double-digit points all but 2 weeks. That is the picture of consistency.
Right.
Oddly enough, this year, Vincent Jackson, surprisingly, averaging double-digit points except for 2 games. Like, that guy is breaking the stereotype that Vincent Jackson is an up-and-down player.
Absolutely.
And he's a lot better. Percy Harvin, double-digit points. These are your top-tier guys. But then you look at someone like a Julio Jones, who is up and down. He'll have like a 30-point week. Then he'll have like 2 4-point weeks. And you can't trust him to be a permanent, to be consistently good. And I think that's what separates the top tier from the middle tier, is the middle tier has upside and can get you points. But the top tier are consistently getting you points.
Here's what's hilarious. Julio Jones is this year's Vincent Jackson.
Yeah.
His fantasy scores, he had 26, then he had 3.5. He had 15, then he had 3.5. He had 21, then he had 8. And he was the guy everyone's touting as going to be the number 1 receiver in the league and all this crap. He's going to have this huge breakout year. And he is Vincent Jackson this year.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I mean, Vincent Jackson is still kind of Vincent Jackson, but he's been on a super, super hot streak. Let's see, 4 out of 6 weeks he's been at 20 points or more. I mean, so I think he was a guy we totally underestimated. But here's the thing. The same thing is going on with the running back. You've got, in our league, this is insane. Arian Foster is 20 points higher than Ray Rice.
Yeah.
Ray Rice is almost 20 points higher than Adrian Peterson. And then Adrian Peterson and C.J. Spiller are close. And then the rest of the guys are under 100 points.
Yeah.
And then you have this range of guys kind of from 85 to 60. And there's about 15 or 20 guys that have between 85 and about 60 points. And they're all these guys like Sean Green has outscored LaShawn McCoy, right? Who's outscored Chris Johnson. Willis McGahee has outscored Darren Sproles. Doug Martin has outscored Reese Jones-Drew, Darren McFadden, Matt Forte, and DeMarco Murray.
But it's back to the same thing, though. Like, LaShawn McCoy has been consistently in the, the mid to low teens, 13, 14, 15 every week. Then you look at Sean Green, and Sean Green had 15, then 2, 6, 3, 5, 36, and 19, or 18.
Yeah.
Like, would you really say that you'd rather have Sean Green on your team than LaShawn McCoy? If you knew that you're going to get, 12 to 17 points from LaShawn McCoy every week, almost guaranteed, versus getting maybe 2 points from Sean Green or maybe 30 points from Sean Green, which would you take to win week in and week out?
Well, you would take the consistent guy, and you would hope that he hits big rather than risking it all. But that's my take. But if I offered you, then let's just speak and let's pretend DeMarco Murray's healthy right now, and he's got a foot thing. He's going to sit this week. I expect he'll be back next week. I'm not too worried about it. He doesn't seem too worried about it. Anyways, DeMarco Murray's had his bye week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Forte has not had his bye week yet, but he did miss one game, okay? Oh, no, he has had his bye week, so he's missed 2 games, okay, with injury. Either way, they're 1 point away in fantasy scoring, okay? They're 1 point away in fantasy scoring, but you would never say Matt Forte is equal to Darren McFadden or to DeMarco Murray. And so it makes trading so hard because I can't acquire a lot of these guys that I want to get because it's the perceived value because of the name and because of the round they were taking in, and it really affects the value. And in our league, it's really been tough to make a trade that people think is fair.
Yeah, and I think what it boils down to is, like, how do you value guys? And I think when you're looking at the draft, when you're at that point in the draft and you're doing all your draft prep, your mocks, and your rankings and everything like that, you should be looking, and this is kind of a preview to draft talk from the offseason when we get there, but you should be looking at what did the guy do over the last 6 games of last year? How did he put the whole season together? How many games did he miss? How many games did he miss time? I think that's important too. It's like Maurice Jones-Drew started this game, but then he missed most of it this past week. Trent Richardson has started the past 2 games, but he's gone out of the game early in both those games. That's tough for a fantasy owner. You're starting a guy because, oh, look, Trent Richardson's going to start. Oh, well, his rib injury picks back up, and now he can't. Now he's not playing for most of the game, and hard to see an Ogbenaya come in and do some stuff. But you're not going to – if they say Trent Richardson is starting a game, you're not going to bench him. That's not a guy you're going to bench. Same with
especially against the Colts defense that just gave up 36 fantasy points to Sean Green. Of course not.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to bench him in that situation. But what's to say he's going to finish the game? He very well could get hurt again and not be able to finish the game out. And because he's got this little injury, but so that's what you have to look at when you're thinking about your draft. Once the draft is over, all conceptions about what a guy is or what a guy is going to do have to go out the window. And you have to, you've got 2 weeks maybe of being able to still base things off a guy's last year value. And then you have to start thinking about what the climate is around him this particular week, or this particular year. Because we're getting ready for what? The Steelers are 3-3. They've had a bye. So we're getting ready for week 8 in the NFL, right?
Yep.
So week 8 in the NFL, we are almost at the halfway point in the season. If you're still basing a guy's value on last year, you're doing it wrong because we've got a big enough body of work, half a season of work, to determine if this guy is the same person he was last year or what this person is this year. Do
you remember in the offseason when everyone said, we have 2 elite tight ends and then we have a bunch of kind of guys who are in the same range?
Yep.
Right? Tight end right now, there are kind of 2, maybe 3 elite guys. Tony Gonzalez is one of them. Your man crush, Gronk is the other, and Owen Daniels it could arguably be the third because he's been having a really great season. But ultimately, man, tight end is so wide right now in terms of talent pool. There's about 10 guys that have scored in the 50s, right? And that is not good. I mean, that's not particularly good. Um, and it's got some of the same connotations going with it. Jason Witten and Owen Daniels were compared today in a conversation I had, and someone said, I'm fine with Witten. And Owen Daniels is the number 3 tight end, and that just shows you, man, tight end is so shallow in terms of I guess shallow is not the right word, but the talent pool is so broad and so kind of even that, it's whatever. Owen Daniels has scored almost 30 more fantasy points this season than Jason Witten, but guys are like, it's whatever.
Well, that's where I was going to go with it, is that, Owen Daniels has got 30 more fantasy points than Jason Witten. Owen Daniels, double-digit points every week, couple 10s, couple 16s, and then a few 16s, a couple singles. Jason Witten had a lot of weak games and had like 2 big games. So really, who's the better value there? It's Owen Daniels. He's consistent. He's got 30 more points on the year. He's better. Like, look at another guy, Heath Miller, my boy Heath Miller, who's been kind of up and down this year, I will admit, but is scoring better than a lot of guys in the league. He's 20 points higher than 20 points higher than even Jimmy Graham, who was supposed to be great. And I know Graham now has missed a game because of his ankle injury and stuff like that, and went out early in that other game. Was kind of only used as a decoy once he got hurt. But also consider this: the Saints started winning when Jimmy Graham stopped playing. That's not to say that Jimmy Graham's going to come out or that they're any better without him or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, like, they're not going to rush him back because they're doing fine without him. They're going to worry about getting him healthy. And that means that he's going to potentially be out for multiple more weeks. But somebody's not going to try to drop Jimmy Graham because of that, because he's going to get picked up right away. But I guarantee if someone like, let's say Martellus Bennett got dropped, people aren't clamoring for him, even though he's doing better than Jimmy Graham this year by, 6-7 points in fantasy.
And he's healthy, and he's used as a red zone target, and he's got high, But I agree. I was even shopping Owen Daniels today in our league, and dude, nobody bit. This is a number 3 tight end of the league. He's only had 2 weeks under 10 points.
Yeah.
And he's the number 3 tight end in the league, and I shopped him in our league. Dude, nobody bit. And I was a little surprised that no one was even interested. And the one guy who even commented on him said, well, I have Witten, so I'm fine. It's, it's not really a big deal. So it's like, man, tight ends, you better just hang on to him. I now have Aaron Hernandez and Owen Daniels in the league.
Yeah.
I should, if I flexed Owen Daniels out last week, like I was thinking about, but I couldn't do it because it's 2 tight ends. But had I flexed him out, I would have won my game.
Yeah.
Instead, I lost by 3 points to some voodoo magic, to some evil voodoo magic that kept Jason
voodoo
Hines
magic
on field goal.
But I think the point that we're trying to make here, overarching, is that the talent pool for all players this year is really, really broad. There's like a couple guys that are standing above the crowd, but for the most part, everyone's really even. It's just about how many guys in that range did you get versus like how many crap guys did you get. And I think that's what's making or breaking fantasy seasons. I mean, like our league right now, there is one person that stands above the crowd at 8-1. Or I'm sorry, at 6-1. I gave us way too many weeks. One guy at 6-1. I'm at 4-3. There's 4 teams at 4-3. There's 3 teams at 3-4, and then 2-5. We're almost at the midpoint. We're almost to where like we're starting to determine seeding, and nothing is guaranteed at this point because it's so broad. Fantasy this year is just broad, and it's all about getting the guys that are in the mid-tier that are hitting in the right week and like being able to make that judgment and grab that guy at the right time and bailing early enough and just, and really rolling the dice. I think it's really all it boils down to.
Yeah, and you say a lot about fantasy as a crapshoot, and I kind of disagree with that a lot. I mean, there's certainly a certain amount of luck involved. I think there's a lot of skill, particularly when you come into how you value guys and then how you evaluate them for the season. This comes into trades as well if you can get a guy that you think is on the upswing, etc. So maybe we can fight over that some other time. But
think about that phrase you just said. A guy you think is on the upswing.
Yeah, but that's valuing, right?
Well, yeah, but valuing is all a crapshoot. Like you can. Because we're not in these guys' heads, we don't know like what they're thinking, what's going on specifically with them. Like when you're evaluating a player as a team, I think there's a lot more like that goes into it. But when you're evaluating a player as a fantasy owner, like you have to hope that that all the pieces come together, that the coaches coach him one way, and that the quarterback gets him involved the way that he needs to and doesn't audible away from him a lot, and that the defense doesn't stop him randomly or key on them that week. Like, you can make good guesses. You can make very educated guesses. But in the end, fantasy football is all guesses.
I mean, I guess that's technically true in the same way that taking a test is all guesses. So grades for everybody is totally asinine because you can just guess correctly.
I disagree. I disagree with that. I think it's an overgeneralization, but
well, absolutely, because you're doing the same thing. You're overgeneralizing, saying the whole game is a crapshoot. But you know certain things. You know when the Falcons coach says, "Yeah, we're going to give Mike Turner less run this year. We're going to decrease his role. We're going to increase our passing game and throw more." You knew Julio Jones and Roddy White were going to have a great year. And you know what? If you were smart, you probably said, "I bet Tony Gonzalez, who's ageless, is going to have a great year too." And Mike Turner, who has been a bit of an anomaly because of a few big games, a few kind of weird runs that he's had, has been decent. But you knew those Falcon guys were going to be usable week to week and we're going to be great. That's not a crapshoot.
No, but you're assuming that one guy over the other. When you talk about a pass game, you're thinking about 2 to 3 wide receivers. In this case, it's pretty much 2 and a tight end. You know, you're thinking about a tight end. You're thinking about, is there a back to catch it out of the backfield, which, for all intents and purposes, Snelling and Jacquizz Rodgers can catch out of the backfield, though not very well, and they're not utilized really well in that role. You know, Michael Turner doesn't catch a lot out of the backfield, but, you know, there's a lot of guys that can spread out a passing game when they say that. Like, the only person that benefits from an increased pass game that's guaranteed to benefit from it is a quarterback. And that's, you know, and so everyone was down on Matt Ryan despite this. People were super high on Julio Jones and Roddy White and everybody, and maybe Tony Gonzalez. Nobody was high. Okay, not nobody, but there was less hype for Matt Ryan despite the fact that he is the key to all that. If he goes out there and stinks this year, then they're not doing anything. Like, Dwayne Bowe was having good years with Matt Castle. Now Brady Quinn's in there. Were you
and he
guessing?
Wants out.
What's that?
And he wants out, Dwayne Bowe.
Well, yeah, but he's got to work his value, because if he wants to get out and get a good contract next year, you know, he's got to increase the value that he's going to get and hope that a team will potentially put the picks into it to get him out of his franchise tender.
Here's what's not a crapshoot, though. Brady Quinn is not a good NFL quarterback.
No, that's
Therefore,
not a crapshoot.
Dwayne Bowe's value decreases, right?
Right.
That's not a crapshoot. That's just a fact. And theoretically, if defenses are smart and Brady Quinn really is that bad, theoretically you might see more 8-in-the-box defensive fronts, which means you can start to think, hey, maybe Jamal Charles' value start to drop.
I agree.
So that's not a crapshoot, though. That's taking information and making a judgment based on it. What's a crapshoot is when guys get hurt. When Aaron Hernandez gets a big lineman rolled on his ankle.
Well, yeah, but I think what you're saying is you're synthesizing a hypothesis, is what you're saying. Like, okay, Brady Quinn is bad. Defenses are not going to worry about the pass as much because Brady Quinn is so bad. The hypothesis is this will hurt Jamal Charles, but there's no guarantee that that's true. It's all just an experiment in hypothesis and, again, crapshoot. If you're saying, and I'm not going to go back to the test, it's not important, but that's why it's a crapshoot, because you can make an educated guess. You can make a hypothesis that Jamal Charles' value will start to decrease because Brady Quinn is the quarterback. But you could also say because Brady Quinn is the quarterback, they're going to run a ton more, and so Jamal Charles is going to have more opportunity to run the ball. And he is not somebody who gets a lot of his carries in volume. He gets a lot of his points and everything like that, and it's happened a lot this year. He'll have a couple runs for like 2, 3, 4, and then he'll break off like a 35-yard run for a touchdown. And that's where Jamal Charles' value comes from. So, you know, they can stack the box, but if he gets a good cutback, anything like that, he also can take it to the house for a long touchdown and end up racking up 20 fantasy points in a week just off that kind of thing, off 1 or 2 of those kind of runs.
Yeah, and you make that determination as a fantasy owner, and you go with that information going forward, right? You're not going to trade Jamal Charles because, again, I've heard this from you, that you think he's going to get way more run, and therefore his value is going to, at minimum, stay the same. I actually kind of agree because I like Jamal Charles a lot. I think he's such a special talent that he doesn't need volume carries to do what he does. He's so shifty that he can make guys miss so well.
I actually think Jamal Charles, and numbers don't say it right now, but I think especially if they were to put a team around him or if he were to go somewhere else, Jamal Charles would be the best running back in the league. because I
Certainly.
like his elusiveness and the way that he runs. And I actually didn't see this much of him before, but this year paying attention to him as a fantasy owner. Arian Foster has a great offensive line, and that is not to downplay his talent because he is really talented. And that's actually before this year I was downplaying his talent a little bit.
Yeah.
Arian Foster is really talented.
It's annoying.
It is annoying. And like a guy like Ray Rice is really talented. But look at a guy like Ray Rice. Like, your guess is good, but then they get into a game against Houston where, it's Ray Rice. He's going to be the key of that offense. He ran the ball like 9 times because they got away from him, because that's what the Ravens do when they're panicked, is they stop using their best player. So that's where I'm coming from with that. I mean, it's, again, we can belabor the point as much as possible, but I think it's a crapshoot. A bunch of educated guesses that you can make. And people that give themselves more education are the ones that are able to do better at fantasy football. People that can pay attention to this and actually put the time into learning about fantasy football are going to do better because they are making these better determinations, these better guesses.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we always preach: watch the games, know what you're doing. And I'm a big proponent of look beyond the games to understand the situation of what's going on, because there's a lot of value there. And that's, I think, where you start to find some sleepers who perform better that you can plug into a lineup. If you need to make a trade for a guy that you really like, you can fill in that spot with these guys that you watch and know what their value and talent and ability is.
So we had a bye week last week, AJ, and I think you and I are at this point now where, we had a little bit of rest time. I'm wondering, do we keep hammering it home, or do we go to our Chex Mix Bold Party Mix predictions this week?
Let's make some bold predictions.
Let's do it.
But let's talk about it. Let's see if we can be bold this week.
Since we had a bye last week, I was not in the film room, so I'm not sure what our predictions were or what came of them. Oops, sorry about that.
Let's see. 2 weeks ago. Man, I got nothing, dude. We should probably track these somehow, huh?
Yeah, we should probably think about that, but that's okay. We took a bye week off. That means none of it counted anyway. We're all winners here, except for AJ, who's a loser.
Yeah, always.
So let's make some bold predictions for this week. All right, we've got Texans on a bye, so there can't be any Texans predictions as I'm looking at tight ends.
Okay.
Because I'd love to make an Owen Daniels prediction because I really like that guy. But
happy to trade him to you. I need some pieces.
Yeah, I know you do.
Well, I'm legit thinking I might just be going to a 2 tight end set and starting Aaron Hernandez and Owen Daniels because I don't know what else to do. But here's an issue: I don't have a starting running back this week, so I need to either hit the waiver wires or I need somebody to trade with me. This is getting to be
and the waiver wire is real thin. I've been trolling it myself, and it is mighty thin.
Yeah.
So let's see. Bold predictions. I'm gonna go to. I know where I'm going this week. Oddly enough, I'm going to the Cleveland Browns this week.
Oh, really?
I am. And I am going to go to my team. I thought about not going to my team, but I'm going to my team as well. And I may not start this guy, but I picked up Josh Gordon, who's a wide receiver from the Cleveland Browns, who over the past 3 weeks has had a knack for catching touchdown passes. Actually, last week he ended up with 13 points. He had a touchdown pass and about 60 yards, but he also dropped a 33-yard touchdown pass that would have sealed not only the game, but also a solid over 20-point fantasy week for him. I'm going with Josh Gordon. They're playing San Diego.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go with him to have a 20-point fantasy game this week. That's right. A Cleveland Browns receiver, a 20-point fantasy game this week is my prediction.
That's a great prediction. I mean, it's great because it's bold. It's not great because I don't think it'll happen. But what do I know? I've only hit on every one of my bold predictions so far.
Except for the ones that you had to finagle and, excuse certain things to make true. But that's fine, whatever.
Which was every week so far. But exactly. I'm okay with it. I have 2 bold predictions. I have one for the record, and I have one for you personally. My first one is this week Oakland is playing Kansas City, and I think this week against a really turmoiled Kansas City team,
Mhm.
I think this is the week that we see Darren McFadden get back on track and start looking like the Darren McFadden people expected to see. I'm gonna go with 18 points for Darren McFadden this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he has a big one.
All right.
Now, my personal prediction for you has to do with my boy RG3 playing against your Steelers. And I think RG3 has just been unbelievable this year. So fun to watch. I think he has another huge game, and I haven't done this in probably 6 years, but I'm gonna predict a Redskins win.
Oh my goodness gracious!
I know, which pretty much guarantees we're gonna lose now. But
Did you see the Steelers defense in the second half? Did you see the Steelers defense in the second half? Now, if Pierre Garçon plays, I might actually be on your side with that. I'm going to go with my Steelers because I think we righted the ship a little bit on defense last week, and I think we're going to be amped up for this game pretty hard. So I do think the Steelers are going to win, but I think that's good that we both are homers about this. And here is something I told someone last weekend as I spent time with people, and this is actually related to your boy RG3. I told somebody that if RG3 had more than either 20 or 30 points this past week, we would do an all RG3 podcast.
Oh.
He had 25. So I don't remember if I said 20 or 30. So here's what I will say. If RG3 has more than 20 points this week in a Redskins win against the Steelers, our next podcast will be completely RG3 centric. And I will say that it can be centered off of him. We'll also talk about other Redskins players, but I know a lot of our fans are Redskins fans.
It's going to happen. We're going to be talking.
If he has more than 20 points in a win against the Steelers this week, next week will be an all RG3 podcast. I will make that. Now, I don't even expect a counter wager.
We're going to talk so much. We're going to talk so much RG3 next week. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
I am, in fact, an RG3 owner in one of my leagues. Thank you to one of our friends that thought he was shafting me with that.
You know what was so funny about that? That's a great story. Go ahead and tell it because I told the first story.
I was in the process of purchasing a home. In fact, literally going and signing my paperwork and grabbing some dinner after buying a house. And I was literally 15 minutes late to an auction draft. The fourth person in the draft knew that there were a lot of Redskins fans and was hoping to get them out of a bunch of money by putting RG3 up there really soon. Yahoo, despite my best wishes, decided that the amount of money that RG3's value was valued at was enough for them to bid for me. And I raised all kinds of hell when I got back and saw that I had been given RG3. I said he was terrible. I think I might have called him a girl.
What was so amazing was we were chatting about how you weren't there, and of course everyone's giving each other a hard time because we all know each other. And once RG3 was put up, and we're laughing, and we see that he's definitely going to go to you because your auto bid kept bidding us up, the next person put up Sean Green with the sole intention of getting him on your team, which happened. So Jimmy shows up, and his team is like RG3, Sean Green, and like some other nub and like Tim Tebow or something. I don't know. It was something ridiculous, and that's why you should always show up to your draft on time.
But I will also point this out, kids. If you don't show up to your draft on time, it may not always be the worst thing in the world.
Because
you may be able to start Donald Brown in a week when he doesn't play and still win because of some of the other guys on your team. Now, I will say, in that league, it drafted me Sean Green and RG3, and I dropped Sean Green immediately after the draft on principle.
Just on principle.
Yeah, and I didn't pick him back up, so I don't have him. My running backs are really bad in that league, like Donald Brown and Andre Brown are who I'm starting. So, yes, show up to your drafts, kids, because you'll get stuck with some crap pieces, but you also might find a diamond in the rough from that. And get the top scoring fantasy player in all of fantasy football this year.
Top scoring fantasy player, man of all Washington, D.C. sports fans' dreams. Bryce Harper even loves him. RG3, man, that kid is unbelievable. He makes the Redskins exciting to watch, which I thought was impossible.
And I said it before, incredibly charismatic. But let's leave all the RG3 talk
For next week.
For if in the slim chance that RG3 has more than 20 fantasy points in a win, if he has 50 fantasy points and they lose, no RG3 talk next week.
Well,
but
that's impossible.
If he has 20 or more fantasy points and they win against the Steelers, we will have an all RG3 podcast next week for your Redskins viewing pleasure. And like I said, it will be around the Redskins and other pieces related to that, and it will be fantasy football related, but it will be an RG3 podcast so that AJ can, I think he has an RG3 jersey or T-shirt or something that he can maybe throw on.
I'm going to sit here in just my RG3 shirt, and that's all I'm going to wear on Google Hangouts, and we'll make it a video podcast.
I'm going to get an RG3 shirt and wear it as pants. I'm actually going to fashion it into a diaper and just wear that for our podcast next week.
RG diaper.
So.
RG diaper. I love it.
RG, that's not something you should be proud of.
I know.
So bold predictions. I'm saying Josh Gordon of the Browns, 20 points. AJ's saying Darren McFadden, 18, and he's predicting a Redskins win over the Steelers this week. I'm waiting for the Redskins beat the Steelers, and RG3 has 20 or more points. We're talking RG3. We're talking the Skins next week. So keep an eye on the game to know what the podcast is going to be about next week. With that in mind, I'm Jimmy at Ducal J. Dean.
And I'm AJ McGraw at Ducal AJM. Jimmy, he canceled the trade and then told me I canceled it. I don't know what to do.